So again, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another National Institute for Congestion Reduction webinar. Welcome to anybody who may be listening on today's recording. It is my pleasure to welcome our two presenters today, Jason Jackman and Tia Boyd, for citizen education as a mechanism for successful public participation, a case study example of the Tampa-Bay Citizens Academy on Transportation. Let me tell you a little bit more about Jason and Tia before I hand the presentation off to them. Jason Jackman is a senior research associate with the Center for Urban Transportation. Jason's experience and expertise include pedestrian and bicycle safety, micromobility research, outreach, training, and education, policy analysis, workshop planning, program campaigns, and management. Ms. Tia Boyd is an urban planner and a research associate with the Center for Urban Transportation Research. Tia's work focuses on multimodal transportation planning and equity in transportation decision-making processes. She has led the development of several tools and resources to support transportation planners and communities as they work to advance equity in transportation. So it's so great to have Jason and Tia here today. So I am going to now hand the presentation over to Jason. So Jason, go ahead and take it off. Take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today present the TBCAT experience, Tampa-Bay Citizens Academy on Transportation, and the citizen education as a mechanism for successful public participation. It's been an amazing process to go through with this program. Especially working with Tia, my colleague Tia Boyd on this, we've had such a great time. Kind of building what the program is today, learning from other best practices to make it what it is and make it a really good program for the citizens to attend. But yeah, I'm going to jump right into this. The Tampa Bay Citizens Academy on Transportation, TBCAT for short. Actually, we don't even we just call it TBCAT now because the other is too long to say. But we call it TBCAT. It's a free 8-week virtual e-learning course to familiarize citizens with transportation in the city of Tampa. So the information we're presenting today was actually from our 2021 course that took place October to December 2021. We're going to have a lot of information on that. We just got finished closing out our 2022 project that ended in December 2022. So we have information on that, and we learned from it so we can make that 2022 experience that much better. It was a partnership with the City of Tampa, particularly with the mobility department with the City of Tampa. There's a lot going on with the City of Tampa. So there was a lot to share and learn from, not only from the citizens, but also from the planners and engineers that work with the City of Tampa and all the great things they're doing. So it was an amazing partnership with this project. I do want to say that we really based the TBCAT program off the Portland State program, their Citizens Academy. And, we learned a lot from what they did and maybe used a little bit and kind of created our own over here for what was needed. However, I will say that we definitely ran into a situation at the beginning. We wanted to do this in person. This is what we were planning to do. And this was during the pandemic, and we're like, well, what do we do now? And how should we go about doing this? So we went back and we looked at some case studies, and we did our background research on what's been done for virtual citizens academies, and we couldn't find much. So in a way, we're taking this Portland State model and making it virtual and making it accessible for actually more people, believe it or not, who have the internet, who can attend virtually. So we thought that was like one of the greatest benefits. We can reach more people within the city of Tampa, because it's very hard to find citizens who aren't connected, believe it or not. I mean, I believe many people are connected these days, not everyone, but it was enough to say, we could really reach a good group of citizens within the city of Tampa, and maybe citizens who wouldn't normally attend and advocate at public meetings. So we thought that was a huge benefit. And again, we didn't really have that option to meet in person. It wasn't even on our mind. We were like, you know what? We're going to have to just do this virtually. And maybe if there's a chance to meet in person eventually through the program, we can plan for something. But at that point, we're just going to go virtually and see how it goes. The project objectives, well, we wanted to plan, prepare, and implement a transportation course for citizens. I mean, that's the basis of the program is let's get the citizens in this virtual classroom. Let's let them have them learn what's going on around the city, whether it's with transit, whether it's with ped bike safety, the planning, engineering aspects, even the budgeting aspects, how the funds are appropriated. Let's get them interested in transportation, and we had all walks of life too. We had citizens who are really interested, almost transportation enthusiasts, and we had just citizens who just want to learn a little bit more, and maybe they weren't aware about any of the aspects of transportation. So we had all walks of life. We had actually people learning, going into school for planning. We had people who were thinking about uh, changing their fields. So it was just an interesting group, and I think the definitely during the first year, 2021, many of the participants I felt worked together. There was a good collaboration between the participants, the citizens attending this this virtual platform, this virtual meeting each week. And I felt like they definitely helped each other out. They connected with each other. Is another way to connect too. We're so social these days on our social media platforms, that it was just another way for people to connect too. So not only did they connect with other people in the group that are interested, they connected with the planners and engineers and other people with transit that are really making strides locally in the Tampa Bay area. So we had many objectives. That was one of them. Let's get the citizens in the room. The next objective was to solicit local partners for guest lectures for these opportunities and project panels. We found that it wasn't difficult to reach some of the local partners. You know, we've already worked with them in the past, so we had a good idea on maybe who we can engage with to bring them to the table. And there was a long list, and we'll talk about that later. But we had to narrow it down because for this course, we only had 2 hours. For each class, for each of the modules. We looked at evaluating. Tia is going to go in the evaluation and the impact of the transportation course. Key goal again is to bring citizens to the table, empower them, educate them, become advocates for transportation. And then at the end, we documented the project results, and that's on the NICR website. On the that will provide the link for you, and there's a project report for that. The learning objectives, you know, we based our modules each week off these learning objectives. You know, learn and understand the past, present, future challenges and barriers to transportation planning. Understand who does what and how transportation decisions are made. Honestly, that category I think interested a lot of people, because I think that gets lost in translation on not only how budgets are allocated, but who is making the decision. And at the end of the day, it's really the citizens that are advocating for these decision makers to make good decisions on their transportation network. So in a way, it comes back around to the citizens, and they get them really excited to say, well, if if the citizens are responsible for helping make these decisions, then I want to get more involved. And we did see a lot of that by the end of the course, that enthusiasm to get involved more. Exploring options for improving the system and some of the challenges for the barriers of improvement. So to improvement. So you think, um, and this is another key point here. You know, you have citizens attending the class virtually, and then they're like, "Well, I wasn't aware how much goes into making changes or implementation." And I thought that was just awesome to hear, because we heard that from several attendees. It's not just, hey, we want to do this tomorrow. It sometimes it's planning, it's budgeting, it's putting all your ducks in a row. And just having them tell us, now I know. uh, I think that shows the success of the course. And we really reach the citizens who can participate, can advocate and they realize changes don't just happen tomorrow, but they can happen if planned appropriately. Recognize stakeholder perspective and explore mutually beneficial solutions. Uh, Other objectives: develop skills for continued learning on planning and sustainable infrastructure as the field evolves. And then finally, practice communicating the need for multimodal solutions and sustainable infrastructure to address transportation needs. So these are the course learning objectives. We had a syllabus for the class. We had 28 students come back each and every week. And when I say students, it's interchangeable with participants and citizens. So I don't want to confuse anybody. But the syllabus helped the participants follow along. If maybe they couldn't attend one course, they can watch the recording and they know what they're watching, because we did record each of the presentations for later viewing. The course themes. So with the course themes, we made sure we included each of the course themes in all the modules. So each module for the week, we included all these course themes. We made sure to include these course themes because they're important and they tie in together with a robust transportation system. We hear a lot about the ecosystem, how transportation can't work without the other, and we're seeing a lot of that now, that it's all interchangeable, and it has to work with each other. It can't exist without the other. So we made sure that these course themes are working the same way, and and it was a good way to educate and bring in that, each theme is important to the other. So we made sure we brought that in, and we let our guest panelists know, like, hey, these are the themes. Make sure when you're presenting that you kind of address each of these themes throughout your presentation. For the course modules, well, we had several of them. These are each weekly module. Our class took place each Wednesday, again virtually, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And the weekly modules are listed here. Now, I can tell you right now, um, a 2-hour class, you're thinking, okay, that's a long class. You wouldn't believe how fast that class went by in 2 hours. You had your guest presenters. We had up to 3 guest presenters or slash panelists each week, and their average presentation was close to 10 to 15 minutes. And after each presentation, um, we would have questions and question Q&A session for the panelists. And that Q&A session for each panelist was roughly about 5 minutes. So we timed it down to the last second. And at first we were thinking, well, 2 hours sounds like a long time. By the end of the course, the entire course for 2021, we were like, 2 hours is not enough time, but any longer it's too much time. So we, you know, learning from the previous year and moving forward to 2022, we realized maybe we should stick with maybe 2 presenters each week and then have a longer Q&A session, because it's about the citizens asking questions. It's about them understanding and learning rather than just being lectured and, okay, here's, a couple minutes. We wanted a longer Q&A session, and for year 2 we definitely got that. However, year 1 was definitely, each week we were throwing out information, and based on the responses and the evaluation from the survey we sent out, we felt like, a lot was gained from that, and the citizens definitely enjoyed the course, and it wasn't overwhelming. And like, as a moderator here, we felt like, oh, maybe it's too much information, but it wasn't. It was interesting. We had great presenters, and that's why we did it again for the second year, because we had so much fun doing it. But for the course module here, I had so many favorites. The introduction and history of this transportation in the city of Tampa, especially city of Tampa. I mean, who doesn't like history? I mean, I'm from the city of Tampa, so it was very interesting to me, especially. But for the citizens themselves, I think it's taking a trip back and how the transportation network was set up, and how it's progressed over the years, or maybe not progressed, and now moving forward today, especially with the multimodal transportation in the Tampa area. I think it was very interesting to see where we're at and where we're going to, especially with the mobility department. Transportation decision making. This was awesome because when we were putting together the agenda and the syllabus, I remember this specifically, that we were like, who are we going to get to talk about this? And I mean, the list, I was like, we can't get that person. They're just probably too busy. And I mean, we had I think 4 or 5 people that I said, there's no way. And we got them all. I was just so happy that we just reached out. I mean, it can't hurt to ask, right? And we reached out and they all agreed and they all joined. And it was just an all-star lineup. So, again, if you're thinking about doing something like this and you may think, well, if I ask this person, they're probably going to say no. I'm going to go to the next person. No, ask the original person. Ask the person that you want to participate, because the worst you'll get is a no. And we didn't get a no. We got yeses. And I think for week 2 module, transportation decision making and planning, it was so exciting. I mean, each week I was like, all-star lineup. This is awesome. Connection between land use, transportation, and travel time. I love this module because we got to see where the city is going, with their transportation, how the land use is changing the lay of the land, the format of downtown, and the surrounding areas. We learned travel time with transportation demand management. We had a great speaker from Qatar speak about that. Taking the bus, we had an opportunity to talk about taking the bus, the opportunities and challenges for a robust public transportation system, and then even Vision Zero, getting home alive. We got to talk about what the city's doing with their Vision Zero plan, and inform the citizens who are attending on those details. Because sometimes the city does a great job on their social media, on sharing information, and they continue to do a great job. However, many people may not be on social media, so this is a good opportunity to present what the city's doing, especially with their Vision Zero plan. And then finally, taking action. We had some amazing presenters, advocates locally in the Tampa Bay area, who actually, I felt like, really reached the citizens who were going to step up to the next level and advocate. And they made some great examples. They made some good cases on why you should participate, why you should take action. So that was exciting to see. And again, we got a lot of feedback from our surveys that we sent out to participants, and it helped us evaluate what they learned. And Tia is going to go into that in a moment. So I did mention the presenters. For the most part, we had a good group from the City of Tampa, especially the mobility department, come and present. It was a partnership with the City of Tampa, so we definitely asked them to do a little more as far as being a presenter or helping organize some of these presentations. And again, we were there for them. We want to serve their citizens and help educate their citizens. So they're more than happy to step up and really be a big part of the planning effort with this project. We had Hillsborough County. We had representatives from Hillsborough County, the Transportation Planning Organization, HART, Florida Department of Transportation, even Qatar. We had a few presenters from Qatar, some consultant firms, and advocacy groups. So again, we were very fortunate to bring in a lot of all stars who are really engaged and really on the forefront of the transportation movement in the Tampa Bay area, not just the city of Tampa, but the Tampa Bay area. So, very fortunate to have them present. That's why each week I was very excited to see what the next presenter was going to present on. So, one of the things that we did consider again was, okay, we're doing this virtually, but which platform? There's so many different virtual platforms out there, and we weren't sure which to go with. We didn't really budget to have one of the platforms that you pay for, unfortunately. Unfortunately, but we decided to go with the Teams platform, due to the fact that we did have a subscription through our university, and it did help. It's kind of like that low hanging fruit. What can we work with that we have right now? And we went with the Teams platform. However, we needed uh, at least 2 hours for each session, a capacity of at least 35 attendees, including presenters, the ability for participants to register weekly, and we found that very useful through the Teams platform. Option for attendees to participate as an audience member and presenter, so that was easily interchangeable during the presentation. um, Even a chat function, which we used heavily during the presentations, because we wanted people to, when it's on their mind, they can ask questions during the presentation. So we didn't want to wait till the end. Hey, if you have a question, put in the chat. And we found some best practices for the following year for 2022 based on 2021 in the chat function. So one thing we did different, just to let you know, is that uh, sometimes we interrupt the presenter and ask a question because it was in the moment. We want them to have that dialogue in the moment. A lot of presenters didn't like that, but we found it was more engaging for the audience to kind of have that chat option mid presentation, and it made it more engaging. And then we had the option to record and share. So there's many options. The platform we selected is was the reason because of those options. And also, since it was kind of mid towards the end of pandemic time, uh, a lot of the platforms out there were evolving to be more accessible to the public. And even the Teams platform was changing a bit, even mid program. There's little functions that changed, and I asked T, I go, hey, what happened here? I guess they updated something. And you're going to get that on social media, you're going to get that on different sharing platforms, but that's something that we had to adjust to. It's like, okay, what do we do now? And that was fine, but it did catch us off guard when we first were ready to get the information out to the citizens that we had a course. We had an 8-week course ready to go. We let them know it was virtual. We had to market the program. We had to find a way to reach the citizens. And I think that was challenging at first because at first we were like, well, we could just put it on social media and maybe word of mouth would be great. And word of mouth was great. There's a few people who registered because they heard about it through friends or agencies, which is fine. But since this is so uh, City of Tampa specific, like the residents within the City of Tampa limits, we really leaned on the City of Tampa to use their social media platforms to reach out to citizens. I mean, there was before that. I mean, I was going on next door apps and going to the neighborhood association groups and messaging the neighborhood association groups. Hey, we got this. Can you share it? Are you interested? And getting their chair of their associations there. But I think when you have the city sharing the information, it really does help. It helps get the message out. It helps market the program. Not that they don't trust us for asking them, but when the city announces they have a Citizens Academy on transportation, it's free, it's virtual, and then they promote it on their social media. It definitely helped. I mean, our numbers skyrocketed with registration, and we were happy with that. And we at one point we had to close and say, hey, this is too many. And I'll talk about that in a second too. But Hillsborough TPO, Transportation Planning Organization, also promoted Cutter. And then we found the neighborhood associations also were um, a good buy-in to get them to participate too, because we felt this was also uh, really important for the neighborhood associations to know what the city of Tampa is doing, especially with their planning. But once the city of Tampa marketed and put that out on their social media platforms, again, our numbers jumped through the roof, and we're so happy about that. Um, one thing I do want to mention is, and we learned this last year with the program. Part of our syllabus is that we wanted the participants to create their own project, and what they would do is for 6 weeks out of the 8, 6 weeks they'd learn about the transportation network, how things work, whether it's the planning, decision making, all about transit, pedestrian, bicycle, the implementation. But we wanted them to create their own presentation for week 7, week 8. And year 1, I mean, I think we had about 8 or 9 presentations. So they created their own PowerPoint, they created their own subject matter, their area of interest, and they presented it to not only the class, but a panel of experts. Some of those experts were the guest speakers, some of them weren't. We collaborated, brought them together, and anyway, the panelists were able to comment on them, provide suggestions. So we had a good number of presentations from the citizens that they put together. They put this information together. And we learned from that going into year 2. So when I talk about we had 28 participants that came back each and every week, and then we had maybe a fraction of those participants create their own presentations. And they worked in groups too, which helped. But we learned this year, not to move on to this year, but we learned this year that um, we may have closed the door too early on registration. And maybe those who do register, like we felt that we wanted City of Tampa residents only. We felt at the beginning, especially year 1, we need City of Tampa residents only. But then, moving into year 2, as people started to learn more about the program, especially locally in this area, more people wanted to join. And then someone said, "Well, why are you closing the door, especially when it's virtual? I mean, shouldn't everybody, learn?" And I think in the background, in our minds, we were like, well, if we have too many projects at the end of the course, like where the students present their own projects, it's just going to be too much, and we have to kind of hone in and say, let's keep the class small so we can have some quality projects. And but hindsight, it's opening up this project and virtual opportunity to everyone. And I think moving forward, it's something that we will consider doing instead of just capping it off at a certain number. Which again, 35 people in one class, I think that's a good number because that was our max. But moving forward, we might have another strategy to expand the virtual room, but have maybe select um, participants really involved, like creating their own project from the get go. Like, hey, who wants to do this? Because we'll have to cap that off. But anyway, it's lessons learned, and we build from that, and hopefully learn from other areas around the country where they're doing something similar, which we've done as well recently. But we offered 6 virtual class sessions, 2 virtual presentation panel sessions. For year 1, we had office hours. So we actually had office hours set aside to help the participants with their projects. And in year 2, we did an in-class lab session because we had fewer presentations for year 2. But we held those classes, those sessions in class during week 7 and 8 labs. We also did a lab walking tour. So it was like a field trip. So we invited participants to join us in downtown Tampa with our guides of the City of Tampa Mobility Department. They guided us through the downtown, all the changes that are occurring. I mean, you wouldn't believe it, the changes that have happened within the last 2 or 3 years. And a lot of the participants, especially from the 2021 year, they hadn't seen the changes because everything was on lockdown, and it was just so great to see these changes and led by our guides from the City of Tampa who have a wealth of information on the changes, the land use. It was really awesome to see and be a part of, and we did that for the 2022 year as well. But so exciting. And that was one of the best parts about the program, is just to meet everyone face to face instead of virtually, but also have more conversation about transportation and advocacy. So it was another purpose to meeting, just besides the walking tour. We actually had a lot of discussion during that time. USF student involvement. The goal of the student involvement in the course was to provide technical support to TBCAP participants as they develop their project. So basically, we brought on several USF students through the planning. The USF planning the MERP program. It's the planning school at USF. Also, the public affairs school, which actually MERP follows under the public affairs program. But they helped the citizens with their project. So if they needed help with any GIS work, any kind of policy analysis, any kind of technical um, information they can add to their PowerPoint presentations, the students helped them with that. So it was nice to see that collaboration with the students at USF and the citizens work together. And we have a lot of great stories about that. Too much to go through today, but we felt that was such a nice collaboration to see, and the outcomes were very positive. Well, I'm going to pass it on to Tia Boyd, my colleague, who's just awesome to work with, and she's going to provide some more information and also the course evaluations, what we did and what we saw.
Thanks so much, Jason. Hi, everybody. I'm not gonna take too much time, but I do want to share with you all some of the things that we I've learned and some of the feedback that we've got on TB based on the evaluations. So we divided the evaluations into three parts. The first was the pre-course evaluation. So we wanted to get a sense of how well the participants understood how transportation decisions were made, how comfortable they were advocating for communities' transportation needs, and if they regularly attended city council meetings. So this is our first step at getting to know them, their level of knowledge, their level of comfort when it comes to transportation. Then there were weekly session evaluations, so six for each of the 6 weeks where course content was taught, we had session evaluations. And these ask questions like, was the content stimulating and interesting? Was the information presented at a pace that they felt was appropriate for their understanding so that they can have time to digest and process the information that was being provided? Was the content clear and understandable? So, did it use a lot of jargon, or was it presented in a way that they, as citizens, people who are not may not be transportation professionals or may not have that base knowledge of some of the transportation terms, were still able to understand what was being presented? And then a question on if they found the content challenging. So, how difficult or easy was it for them to understand, maybe process, digest, and potentially use the information that they were getting in the course? And then the post course evaluation was a reflection of the pre course. So it asked, after taking the course, if they felt like they had a better understanding of how transportation decisions were made, how comfortable they are now, if they're more comfortable advocating for transportation needs in their community, and then if they plan to, moving forward, attend city council meetings, because one of the key goals of TBCAT through providing knowledge was to, of course, get them more engaged as citizens and get them to be um, more comfortable advocating, developing those relationships with agency staff and maybe other advocacy groups. So this was really the key to finding out if this course and if the sessions did that each week. So just quickly on attendance, through the virtual platform, we assessed if they planned on attending or if they were attending online, if they were able to instead watch one or more of the recorded sessions, or if they did both. So if they attended online and still went back, and we sent the recording every week, usually classes on Wednesday. So by Thursday or Friday, we would send the recorded session out to everybody who registered for that week. And we had a few people who let us know ahead of time they couldn't attend, so that they would need the session. Of course, we would include them in that list. So for year one, we had about half, a little more than half, attend the live session and watch the recorded session. In year two, we had uh, about half again who attended and watched the recorded session. In year two, though, we did have 25% who watched strictly just watch the recorded sessions. And this was somebody who let us know ahead of time that I'm very interested in this knowledge. I want to know, I want to get this information. And a few people reached out and say, hey, I know I can't make Wednesday at from 5 to 7, but I want to get this knowledge. I want to get this information. And so they registered weekly for the session, even though they weren't able to attend, and they got those recorded sessions and were able to listen in and still get this knowledge and this information that was provided by our presenters each week. And then, of course, 25% watch one or more of the live sessions online only. So they didn't go back and listen to the recording. In year one, and just to explain the graph a bit, so the dark green is the pre-course. So people who understand how transportation decisions are made, if they strongly agree with the statement, to strongly disagree. So we see the majority somewhat agreed. They felt like they have some understanding of how transportation decisions are made. But after the course, taking the course, we see an increase in that understanding of how transportation decision made. So there definitely is improvement in year one, and we see a similar trend in year two for the post-course evaluation. So people have an improved understanding of how transportation decisions are made. Not only do we see that in the evaluation, but also in some verbal feedback that we received too, in speaking to the participants at the walking tour, in chatting with them in the chat through the in the sessions. We were able to hear that, hey, yeah, I there are things that I didn't realize that, how transportation worked, how transportation decisions are made, how funding works, how we go from an idea or a need to an actual plan to actual infrastructure. So these are things that we are hearing feedback on the effectiveness of the course. So level of comfort advocating for transportation. So similarly, we see um, quite a bit of people somewhat agree. Um, but we do see, in terms of from somewhat agree to strongly agree, more people, we see that jump between strongly agree to some agree for the confidence to advocate for their community's transportation needs in year one, year two. So we have, you see somewhat disagree. I don't know if you can see my pointer if we need it, but there was a few people who weren't comfortable advocating for their community's transportation needs. Um, but we see that change after the course, that there are quite a bit of people who are more comfortable. And then in year two, we see a similar trend where we have strongly agreed. We have everybody who completed the post course evaluation. They felt like they are more comfortable advocating for transportation in their community. And year one, attending city council meetings. Um, you can see here that there are more people who agree that they plan on attending. We have a few who say, I still may not attend, and that's okay. But we do see some or a few more people who said, yes, I will attend city council meetings. I didn't before, but I will have to now, or I might check it out now. And we see something similar going on in year two. So, on to the overall successes of TVCAT. We did have several participants who, as we mentioned, Jason mentioned, there were varying degrees of knowledge and involvement before um, these persons participated in TB Cat. There were some who have been very well known advocates for transportation, and then there are many people who just wanted to know more so that they can understand what's happening in their community. We've heard back that there are a few people who they weren't involved in advocacy groups before, and now they are members and now they are leadership in some of these transportation advocacy groups or transportation organizations. We also do have a member who is now an elected official in the city, and has been very involved, and she does credit the information that she got from TVCAT to her ability to serve in her role as an elected official, that she has a better understanding of transportation and therefore um, can 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 support her constituency when it comes to transportation. and has also made those additional connections to her community members before she was an elected official. So now she's able to, do that job with much more fervor. There are connections between participants. At the end of the course, we asked the participants if they would like their contact information shared. So throughout the course, they're getting to talk in the chat. It's all virtual. They only met face to face in the lab, but we did ask, hey, who wants to keep in touch? And we got a very strong, overwhelming response from the majority of the participants that yes, I would like to get some contact information and keep in touch with my fellow participants. And they have made very strong connections through that very simple question at the end. And then, of course, opportunities for communication and relationship building between agency staff and participants. So it is a two-way exchange when we have a platform like this. So yes, agency staff is coming and sharing information and sharing knowledge about the processes related to transportation with the citizens, but also agency staff's also hearing from it's another opportunity for them to hear from citizens and for them to know about what they want to know more about and what they want to learn about and some of the issues that they are facing. So it was a really good two-way exchange of information between agency staff, even the advocacy groups, and those participating citizens. Jason, did you want to talk about some of the other successes?
Yeah, well, if you go to the right, citizens' knowledge about the processes of involved in project planning and implementation. And I mentioned this before, that aha moment the citizens had in the class where they realized the whole budgeting process, the planning process, especially if they were working on a project, they would explain that while they were going through their own PowerPoint project to present to the class, they realized that it just can't happen as fast as they want to. Now, we'd all love to have that implementation of new sidewalks, roadways that are repaved, but it does take that advocacy and that planning and that allocation of budget. And they realized it was an amazing thing to hear them say, because they took the time out of their day, they're busy days. They're doing this on the side of their jobs, besides the citizens just attending, they're working during the day. So they, at the end of the day, they can attend the class, but they spent time out of their day to call agencies and go, hey, how does this work? And if they didn't get it in the class, they're going to call and I'm working on a project. Can you tell me how it works? How does the budget work? Because I want to create a project in my area to show the class, to present to the class. They got to do their own little project, whether it's installing a bike lane or putting in a crosswalk. They got to do their background research, and they realized it is a process. It's not something that happens fairly quickly, but with proper advocacy, proper leadership, it could happen a lot quicker, especially if the citizens are backing it. The awareness of this program in other cities, uh, as the registration occurred for not only year one and year two, we were getting emails and calls saying, hey, when can we get this for our city? Because it was more City of Tampa focused. But we thought that was just an awesome segue to say, well, it's something that we can look into in the future, to do something like this, because it is important. It's an important mechanism to engaging citizens, having a virtual component. Although I would love to have an in-person component of this, and I think that's coming down the line, because I think it's one thing to do virtual, but to have an in-person or even a hybrid option, I think that'll be really fun to work with. The effective online virtual citizen training is, I can say, yes, this is based off Portland State's model, but again, we didn't find much literature on virtual citizen education, especially when the time we were starting this. So, we felt it was very effective going through the process, going through the ups and downs of figuring out which platform, how we can reach the citizens, how we can get them coming back each and every week. Um, Being nice to them so they come back each and every week. But we found a process there, and I think we're still learning from it. And I think other cities around the country, other universities around the country are also learning how they can effectively engage online virtually through this training. And then the outcomes shared nationally. I've had a chance to do this recently and share the outcomes of the project. And I got to hear from other universities and agencies how what they're doing, and I can take that information and apply it to future programs. So it's very exciting. A lot of successes. I think either way, we learned a thing or two working with the citizens, and I know agencies did, and as well as the citizens. So it's learning all around, education all around. So very exciting still, and more to come, hopefully. But that's all we have really for this presentation. Again, I thank you all for attending, and again, I don't think the story ends here. I think there's more to come because it just worked out too well to work with these citizens. And if it can be a template to work for other agencies, great. You know, we have the policy brief online, and I believe we have a handout attached too. So feel free to ask any questions. We really do appreciate your interest in this.
Thank you so much, Jason, and Tia, for what sounded like a very exciting and project that you both had the opportunity to work on. I did want to just, we've got about 10 minutes or so left for today's session. And I did want to just provide us with, provide you an opportunity to ask some questions of Tia and Jason. So that Q&A box is located on the bottom right hand corner of your screen. It does look like we got one quick comment that came in, and it says, "Jason, thank you, Jason, for the description uh, of the very interesting citizens outreach program the city of Tampa is doing." Um, the first question comes in. It says, "Did you do anything to attract people in underserved communities specifically?"
I'll take that one. And Tia, I guess if you want to follow up. Um, yeah, you know, I think working with the city, there's a protocol the city has to reach underserved communities in the Tampa Bay area, as far as maybe with their social network, their neighborhood association. They have a neighborhood association group, or not a neighborhood association. It's yeah, it's like a coalition for their neighborhood associations. So we went through that area as far as creating a flyer, creating an online flyer, and dispersing that information to all the neighborhood groups within the city of Tampa limits. And there are a lot. There are a lot of neighborhood association groups, neighborhood advisory groups. We went through the Transportation Planning Organization and all their subgroups that they have, whether it's the Bike Ped Committee, the Livable Roadways Committee. They have many other committees we promoted through there. And then specifically, there were several neighborhoods that I personally worked with over the past like 15 years that were underserved communities within the city of Tampa limits. So I used my past connections to really connect with the communities that I worked with, that I knew would benefit from a program like this. It does get a little challenging when it becomes virtual, all virtual, because as I mentioned before, a lot of people have cell phones, which you can use this program for with a cell phone. Um, Typically, we see citizens on laptops too, or desktops, but you can attend with a cell phone the Teams meeting. But we felt that could have been one area we could have capitalized more on with the in-person, just having opportunities around the community that, you know, especially you have worked with or that we have connections with. But we try to really make sure we reached all citizens that we could, and having that city of Tampa connection was I think the biggest benefit, because they have the branches and the ties to the community that we may not have the connections to that community.
Okay. The next question comes in and says, how were year one and year two funded, and is there any opportunity for future sessions?"
Yes, so the funding was part of the National Institute for Congestion Relief. It's a conglomerate of universities working together, institutes working together. As you can see on the screen here, University of South Florida, Berkeley, Texas A&M, and University of Puerto Rico. They all work together on this NICR program, which is USDOT funded. However, through the nicer each program like TB-CAT is a little grant, right? So basically these little grants, this is the education component, part of the National Institute for Congestion Relief. We do require a match. So we have a little bit of funding from NICR, but we also need a match from partners for this community project. The City of Tampa offered a match for this project, but it was an in-kind match, which means that it's not a cash match, it's services matched to maybe their salary or their facilities that they're going to provide. So that's how this was funded. um, uh, and that's how most of the projects are funded. You do need a match for this project, but yeah, that's hopefully there's an opportunity for this in the future. Again, it's a good template. um, it's a kind of good starter template to get going for future sessions, whether it's funded through NICER again or funded through an agency locally around the state or around the country. It's just a good mechanism to keep going and find some buy-in with communities that want to do something similar.
Thank you, Jason. There are quite a few questions that have sort of popped in wanting to know what the participants received at the conclusion or throughout the program. So did they receive any kind of certificate, any kind of swag, anything that you can share about that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead. Oh, no, I was just gonna say the participants did receive certificates at the end. Those who attended at least one session, and because there are some people who did communicate with us that things come up in life, but they at least attended one the entire one. Two or more would be better. But they did receive a certificate. Year ones, they have gotten their certificates ready. Year two has not gone out yet, but it will go out very, very soon. Um, Jason, anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, they gain knowledge too. No, no, that's the thing. Year two's going on a lot longer than last year, so we're actually, you know, planning a few more elements to this project for year two, which um, aren't yet finalized, but we're continuing the connection with the participants. So we're still working with them, even though the modules are done. So we're kind of going as far as we can with this project to keep in connection and keep them engaged with this project.
Great. Were there any lessons learned or things you would do differently?
I can start by saying, the virtual side of it. I really think that helped during a time of isolation. What I would have done differently, I wish we would have been able to go in person. I mentioned that before. I think at least a hybrid option, and I think that's what I would love to do in the future. Just some hybrid option we can do virtually, but also meet in person more often because I really felt like during those lab trips, those field trips downtown that we did, helped really connect with them more better. That face to face, there's nothing like it. So that's one thing I wish we could have done differently. I don't know if we had the opportunity, but moving forward, I think it will be an option to do hybrid.
Um, is there any sort of indication in sort of the percentages of people that might have dropped out throughout the program? I know you said each person had to attend at least one session to receive a certificate, but anybody drop out that you are aware of?
Um,
We
oh, go ahead, Tia.
Okay. We had I would say handful. We had so between year one and year two, we had um a lot of people register. And what we found is after, usually with I think most things, even with university level courses or whatever, you have people who they sit in the course, they want to get a sense of what it is to make sure that it aligns with what their particular interests are, or what their focus is. Um, So we did have a few people who said, I thought I had the time. I am just so busy and life things are coming up, and so they did have to drop out. But what we did find is that through the course of the 8 weeks, you get your group who are consistent and they are very involved. So that's what we found between year 1 and year 2. We had although we had some people who they may show a few weeks here and there, or a few people who started out strong and, things happen. We did have our group, that they were very engaged in the chat. They were very, um we saw the growth, week to week. Some people who may even started out a bit, not as active in the chat, that they became more vocal as time went on. They got more comfortable. So we even though we had there was consistency there, with our participation week to week.
Yeah, and I want to second that. We had some great participants and people that really opened up as time went on. But I do wish that I didn't put a cap on it this past year. The first year was fine; we were learning, but we put a cap on the numbers, and I think we should have opened up. Going back to that previous question, um, just not close it off. Just say, hey, if you want to attend, come on in. It's virtual. But I think that was it. And also getting back to that other question, uh, did anybody just drop off? People are busy. Things happen in life, and we accept that that they have to take care of their lives, as Tia mentioned. So either way, we developed friendships through this. We got to meet so many people, and it's people that we will remember and know when we see them walking on the streets or at a meeting. It's awesome. It's just a really great way to network with our community.
Okay, Jason and Tia, what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to open up the evaluation for everybody who's still logged in. If you could just take a few moments to complete the evaluation, that feedback is very important to Tia and Jason. Is it okay if I just ask you two more questions, and then we'll be, if anybody needs to log off, they can, but may I just ask two quick questions of you both?
Sure.
Mhm.
Okay. The first question is, I know briefly you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that this was based off a program in Oregon. So can you tell us how this program compared to the city of Portland's program?
Um, yeah, I'll start by saying that we looked through their report and what they did, and they had modules. They met in person. That's the first difference. They met in person, and again, this was several years ago, so prior to what we were doing. So they met in person. They had more modules. I think they had about 4 or 5 more modules, uh, which different topics. Um, Maybe the citizens, each city is different in this country, and the way they perceive transportation. And I know Portland is kind of on the forefront of ped bike, and Florida's pretty much there too, and Tampa on its way if it's not there already. But also when it comes to citizen advocacy, I think they may have had the upper hand with that in Portland. And then coming here, it's just a different atmosphere. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're on our way. We're As far as citizen advocacy for something like ped bike issues, advocacy like that. But getting just citizens who are not normally involved, I think that was the other thing that's different. Like we didn't get the typical people interested in transit. We got citizens attending who just they wanted to learn more. They weren't sure, as opposed to maybe Portland State, where you get maybe someone attending class and they're already really into the transportation issue. They already know. So that's one observation I read from the report, um, that was a little different, and we definitely had different process, and we are virtual again. That was 100% different right there, and I think it was effective too. We got to reach a lot of people that wouldn't have access or wouldn't have the time to attend.
Thank you, Jason. I did want to let everybody know I did put a quick link to the nicer the where the final report is posted, um, off of the NICR website, because there was just a quick note in here that said guidebook question mark. So I think that they're just looking for a copy of the report. But did you want to talk just a little bit
Ah,
briefly about what's included in the report? And I know you said there was also a policy brief.
Yep. So in the report, it just outlines some of the points that we talked about today. So it gives an overview of the course content, a bit of our marketing and outreach strategies, overview of each of the weekly course sessions and their descriptions, a bit about the student involvement and the ways that the student were involved through the TBCAT Student Lab, a summary of the course evaluation, and then a highlight on our lessons learned, which include lessons learned on marketing and outreach, the virtual platform, the session structure, presenters and panelists, course projects, and then the in-person engagement lessons learned. I will also note that for year two, we are developing a virtual Citizens Academy guidebook. So please be on the lookout. That should be done later on in the year. So we're very excited about that part because we think that we have gained a lot of valuable information about the virtual Citizens Academy. And we did find, like Jason mentioned, there's not a lot of information out there on that now. So we hope that many of you and others will find that useful if you plan to produce something similar.
Thank you so much, Jason and Tia. I know we've gone about 4 minutes over, but on behalf of the National Institute for Congestion Reduction, thank you so much for attending today's presentation. I know that there are many questions that are still in the Q&A box. I will download those questions. I will send them to Jason and Tia, and they will be able to follow up with you via email. And I do apologize that we weren't able to get to all of your questions, but we'll make sure that you do have an opportunity to connect with either Jason or Tia. Just as a quick note, our next webinar is scheduled for February 9th with a researcher from Texas A&M Transportation about the measure access for, using crowdsourced travel behavior data, the easy button to real access and equity. Again, that registration is available in the web link section. So on behalf of the National Institute for Congestion Reduction, thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and we'll see you all real soon. Bye, everybody.